What if the man you built your life with planned the ultimate betrayal? Marcus Thorne thought he was clever. He told his devoted wife, Eleonora, he had a business trip. But he wasn't going to Singapore. He was taking his mistress, Sienna, on an ultra-luxury cruise, a cruise meant for his wife. He boarded the $800 million Odyssey Sovereign, feeling like a king, but he missed one tiny detail. He was on her ship, and she wasn't just on the ship. She owned it. This isn't a story about a cheater. This is a story about a king flying into the sun, not realizing his wife built it. Marcus Thorne loved the view from his 68th floor apartment in Manhattan, mostly because it confirmed he was, quite literally, above everyone else. His world was one of aggressive acquisitions, hostile takeovers, and the cold, hard validation of a Patek Philippe watch. His wife, Eleonora Salvatore, was different. To Marcus, Eleonora was a beautiful, elegant piece of his collection. Old money, soft-spoken. She was the class to his cash. He genuinely believed she spent her days moving money between pointless family charities and planning silent auctions for dusty museums. He called her family's business the Salvatore Trust, her little hobby. He never once, in 10 years of marriage, bothered to ask what the Salvatore Trust actually did. He was a shark, and he believed he had married a docile, beautiful goldfish. "Ellie, darling," he said, straightening his tie without looking at her. "Change of plans. The Singapore deal is on. I have to fly out Sunday. I'll be gone for 2 weeks." Eleonora looked up from her coffee. Her face, composed and serene, barely flickered. "Singapore. But Marcus, our anniversary, the Odyssey Sovereign. It's the maiden voyage. I booked the Poseidon suite." Marcus finally turned. He put his hands on her shoulders, his face a perfect mask of regret. "I know, baby, I know. And I am crushed. But this M&A deal, it's the big one. It's billions. You understand, don't you? It's for us." "Of course," she said quietly. "I understand. Work comes first." "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead. "I'll have my assistant, Amanda, call the cruise line and cancel. They'll probably charge a ridiculous fee." "Don't worry about it," Eleonora said, a strange new stillness in her voice. I'll handle the cancellation." The moment he left for the gym, Eleonora made 2 calls. The first was to a blocked number. "Captain Volkov," she said, her voice dropping the soft, wifely tone and adopting the crisp, clear authority of a CEO. "It's Eleonora Salvatore. I'm confirming my presence on the Sovereign's maiden voyage. I'll be boarding via the crew manifest at Civitavecchia." "Yes. Standard inspection protocol. I want to see everything from the engine room to the kitchens before we welcome the press in Athens. And Captain, I want this kept strictly to the senior crew. As far as the passengers are concerned, I am not on board." She hung up and made the second call, this one to her PR manager, Claire Jennings. "Claire, I need a favor. Marcus Thorne has a booking for the Poseidon suite." "Yes. That Marcus Thorne. He's about to cancel it. Do not let him. I want that booking held no matter what he says. Let him think it's cancelled on his end, but keep it active in the system. And Claire, put a flag on it. VIP, special handling. I want to know the exact moment he checks in, and with whom." Marcus, meanwhile, was at a different gym, the one in Sienna Vance's trendy Soho apartment. "It's done," he said, toweling off as she filmed him for her Instagram story. "I told her Singapore. She bought it. Pack your bags, baby. For 2 weeks you're going to be Mrs. Thorne." Sienna squealed, a sound that could shatter glass. "The Odyssey Sovereign. Oh my God, Marcus. That's like the most exclusive ship ever. I'm going to get so much content. The Poseidon Suite, does it have a private pool? It has a private everything, he smirked, pulling her close. He'd done it. He'd told his assistant to pretend to cancel, knowing the booking was non-refundable. He'd just changed the name of Mrs. Thorne on the manifest at the port. He'd say his wife's passport used her maiden name, a small, stupid lie that he'd smooth over with a $500 tip for the check-in agent. He was a king. He had his empire. He had his mistress. And he was about to have the vacation of a lifetime, all on his wife's dime. He just had no idea how literally true that was. Eleonora stood by the window of her apartment, watching the city lights. She had married Marcus because she thought his ambition was exciting. Now she saw it for what it was, a ravenous, hollow greed. He saw her as a prop. He thought her family business was a joke. He had no idea that Odyssey Maritime was the Salvatore Trust. He had no idea that her charity work was the cover for her role as chairwoman of a $10 billion global shipping and leisure empire. He thought she was the goldfish. He was about to find out. She owned the entire ocean. The port of Civitavecchia, outside Rome, was a symphony of organized chaos. Tourists wrestled with luggage, shuttle buses hissed, and towering over it all, like a slice of a futuristic city, was the Odyssey Sovereign. She was magnificent, a billion-dollar testament to engineering and luxury, her white hull gleaming. Marcus Thorne, in a linen shirt and sunglasses, felt a surge of pure, uncut ego. He'd made it. He held a private car service door open for Sienna Vance, who emerged in a cloud of Baccarat Rouge perfume and a Dior tote bag. "It's huge," Sienna breathed, already filming. "The best, baby. Only the best," Marcus said, tipping the driver aggressively. They bypassed the main terminal, heading for the VIP and suite check-in, a blissfully air-conditioned lounge. As predicted, the check-in agent, a young woman named Sophia, frowned at the screen. "Mr. Thorne, welcome aboard. I see you're in the Poseidon Suite. My apologies, but the system has Mrs. Eleonora Thorne listed as your guest." Marcus gave his most charming, disarming smile. The one he used right before a hostile takeover. "Ah, a classic mix-up. My wife couldn't make it. Family emergency. This is my associate, Sienna Vance. We're doing some on-site business research. I tried to change the name, but my assistant is hopeless. I'm sure we can clear this up." He slid a black Amex card and 5 crisp €100 notes across the marble counter. Sophia, trained to handle high-net-worth clients, barely blinked. But she also knew the Odyssey Sovereign had a new, ship-wide, know-your-guest protocol. "One moment, sir." She discreetly tapped a message on her terminal to her supervisor. The reply was instant. "Flagged booking, 9:09 PS. Per CJ. Accommodate any all guest requests. Do not question. Report all movements." Sophia's professional smile snapped back into place. "My apologies for the delay, Mr. Thorne. It's all sorted. Ms. Vance, welcome aboard. Your SeaPass cards." She handed them the sleek, black cards. "Your personal butler, Mr. Mendoza, will meet you on board." Marcus pocketed the cards, triumphant. "See? Money solves everything." 500 yards away, on the working side of the dock, a black sedan with diplomatic plates pulled up to the crew gangway. Eleonora Salvatore stepped out, dressed in a sharp, navy blue Armani pantsuit. She wore no jewelry save her simple wedding band and a practical watch. Captain Elias Volkov, a man with a face carved from granite and eyes as blue as the sea, met her at the bottom of the gangway. He saluted. "Madam Chairwoman, welcome aboard your ship." "Captain," she nodded, her voice all business. "It's good to be home. How are the new stabilizers performing?" Like a dream, ma'am. You won't feel a thing. Your quarters are ready. Eleonora boarded not as a passenger, but as the owner. She wasn't in a suite. She was in the owner's residence, a 3-bedroom apartment on a private key-card access-only deck just below the bridge, with its own elevator and command center. As Marcus and Sienna were being ushered into the glittering 3-story Pantheon atrium, Sienna gaping at the Swarovski crystal staircase, Eleonora was 2 decks below, in the ship's main galley, grilling the executive chef, Antoine Dubois, on his farm-to-sea provisioning. The near miss happened an hour later. Marcus and Sienna, giddy on welcome champagne, were exploring the ship. "Let's see the main pool," Sienna demanded. They were on deck 10. Eleonora, having finished her inspection of the medical bay, was riding the private glass elevator, reserved for senior officers and the owner, up to the bridge. As the elevator slid silently past deck 10, Eleonora was looking at a report on her tablet. Marcus, on the atrium floor below, looked up at the flash of the moving elevator. He saw a brief, dark blue shape, but his mind was on other things. "I want to find the casino," he said, pulling Sienna along. Their suite, however, was where the first real crack appeared. The Poseidon suite was breathtaking. 2 floors, a grand piano, a dining room for 8, and a sprawling terrace with its own plunge pool. And waiting for them, a man in a flawless white butler's uniform. "Mr. Thorne, Miss Vance, I am Javier Mendoza, your butler for this voyage." Javier was a consummate professional. He had been with Odyssey Maritime for 20 years. He'd served Eleonora's father. He knew, intimately, who Eleonora Salvatore was. When he saw Marcus Thorne, a man he'd seen in photos on Madam Chairwoman's desk, walk in with this bottle blonde, not his wife, a cold, professional fury settled in his stomach. "Welcome," he said, his face a perfect, polite mask. "Can I retrieve your passports for port registration?" As Sienna ran to the terrace, screaming, "Selfie time!" Marcus handed over the passports. Javier looked at them. Marcus Thorne. Sienna Vance. "Will Mrs. Thorne be joining us later, sir?" Javier asked, his voice utterly neutral. Marcus laughed, already at the bar. "No, Javier. It's just Miss Vance and me. For the whole trip. You can," he winked, "make yourselves scarce. We're very low maintenance." Javier nodded. "Very good, sir." He closed the suite door, walked to a service station, and used his private communicator. "Hotel Director Petrov. This is Javier in 909 PS. I have eyes on Mr. Thorne. He is not with the chairwoman. He is with a Ms. Sienna Vance. He has registered her as his guest." The line was silent. Then Mr. Petrov's voice. "Understood, Javier. The captain has issued a ship-wide directive. We are to treat Mr. Thorne and his guest with absolute 6-star protocol. Do nothing to alert him. But you will log every request, every movement, and every word. Report to me, and only me, every hour." "Understood, sir," Javier said. He straightened his jacket. The Sovereign had left the dock. The game had begun. For the first 3 days, Marcus Thorne lived in a fool's paradise. The Odyssey Sovereign cut through the glassy Mediterranean, a floating bubble of impossible luxury. Marcus and Sienna were, in a word, obnoxious. They were new money loud, and the ship's old-world clientele was taking notice. They complained that the complimentary Veuve Clicquot in their suite wasn't Krug. They demanded reservations at the ship's most exclusive restaurant, Le Ciel, and then showed up 40 minutes late, Sienna in a bikini top and a sarong. Marcus treated the crew like his personal servants, snapping his fingers for cocktails and demanding the pool DJ play something with a beat. Javier Mendoza, the butler, was a ghost of perfect service. He documented everything. 0940. Mr. Thorne requests 2007 Chateau Margaux be sent to the hot tub. I advised him it was a €4,000 bottle. He said, put it on the wife's tab. 14 to 20. Ms. Vance requests a full glam squad for her Instagram photos. Demands access to the bridge for a sexy captain photo. Request denied by security. 22 Tarst. Significant noise complaint from Deck 10 below the Poseidon suite. Miss Vance and Mr. Thorne were being intimate on the terrace. Security detail dispatched. And then there was Sienna's Instagram. It was a firestorm of tacky, geotagged content. Every post was a new level of cringe. Image: Sienna in a tiny bikini draped over the piano in the Poseidon suite. Caption: living my best life. My man knows how to treat a girl. Odyssey Sovereign Poseidon suite. Blessed, 100 billionaire lifestyle. Image: Sienna holding up a shopping bag from the ship's Bulgari boutique. Caption: oops, I did it again. He just can't say no to me. Spoiled Oswald Bulgari shot new necklace. This stream of digital consciousness was being monitored directly by Claire Jennings, Eleonora's head of PR, 2 decks above in the owner's residence. Madame Chairwoman, Claire said, her face tight as she held out a tablet. We have a brand image situation. Eleonora was in a full-day meeting, reviewing the ship's new eco-friendly waste disposal systems. She took the tablet, her eyes scanning the photos. She didn't recognize this Sienna Vance. She was just another flashy, desperate woman. Eleonora felt a small, cold stab of pity. Then she stopped on the Bulgari photo. She zoomed in. It was a serpente necklace, a diamond and emerald one, the exact necklace she had pointed out to Marcus in a catalogue 2 months ago for their anniversary. He'd looked at the price tag and laughed. Ellie, that's absurdly gaudy. It's not you. He hadn't bought it because it was gaudy. He'd bought it for her. Eleonora's hand was perfectly steady. Claire, she said, her voice dangerously soft. What suite is this Sienna Vance staying in? Claire hesitated. Madame, she's in the Poseidon suite, with Mr. Thorne. Eleonora handed the tablet back. A silence settled over the room. It was the heavy, cold silence of a glacier before it carves into the sea. Thank you, Claire, Eleonora said. Increase the ship-wide Wi-Fi bandwidth. I want to make sure all of Miss Vance's posts go through. Boost her signal if you have to. Mom, I want the world to have a very clear picture of this vacation, Eleonora said. Please, continue with the ballast water report. The lie wasn't just unraveling. Eleonora was actively pulling on the threads. The biggest threat, however, came not from the staff, but from a passenger. Beatrice van der Meer was a New York society grande dame, a woman whose diamonds were as old as her bloodline. She was an Odyssey loyalist and a friend of the Salvatore family. She found Marcus at the Helios pool bar, trying to order a drink that wasn't on the menu. Marcus, she cried, her voice carrying across the deck. Marcus Thorne, what a surprise! I had no idea you were on the maiden voyage. Marcus froze. He hadn't seen Beatrice. This was a complication. Beatrice, lovely to see you. You look wonderful. Beatrice's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, flicked to Sienna, who was preening on a nearby lounger. And where is darling Eleonora? I was so looking forward to seeing her. I heard she was personally overseeing this ship's launch. Her father would be so proud. Marcus felt a drop of sweat run down his back. Eleonora? Oh, she's not here. A last-minute family emergency. In Geneva. Geneva, Beatrice said, her eyes narrowing. How dreadful. And this is my associate, Sienna Vance, Marcus said, the lie tasting like ash. We're closing a deal. You know, no rest for the wicked. Sienna, hearing her name, sauntered over. Hi, are you like a friend of Marcus's? Beatrice looked at Sienna's neon pink acrylic nails and smiled a smile that held no warmth. Something like that. I am a friend of his wife. Sienna, is it? What an interesting name. Tell me, what deal are you two closing? Oh, it's super top secret, Sienna giggled. I'm sure it is, Beatrice said. She turned back to Marcus. Well, you must send Eleonora, my love. A family emergency. So strange. I just spoke to her cousin in Milan this morning, and she said the entire Salvatore clan was in perfect health. She didn't wait for a response. She simply turned and glided away, leaving Marcus Thorne in a state of cold, stark panic. The ship suddenly felt very, very small. The incident happened on the fourth night, docked in the Santorini caldera. The ship was hosting a night in the Aegean, an elegant, all-white attire party on the main pool deck. Marcus, rattled by his encounter with Beatrice van der Meer, had decided to lay low. He and Sienna stayed in the Poseidon suite, ordering case after case of champagne and all the caviar you have. Eleonora, meanwhile, was not laying low. She was working. Dressed in simple black slacks and a crew-neck sweater, she was on a late-night, unannounced inspection of the Helios deck, a private, passenger-free observation deck just above her own quarters. She was reviewing the emergency lighting with the chief engineer. The generator switch time is 3 seconds too slow, Chief, she was saying. In a real emergency. She was cut off by a high-pitched, piercing shriek of laughter from the deck directly below. And then I told him, if it's not a Patek, I don't want it. The voice was followed by a deeper, familiar laugh, a laugh she had heard every morning for 10 years. You are terrible, Sienna, absolutely terrible. Now get over here. Eleonora froze. She walked to the edge of the observation deck and looked down. Directly below her, on the private terrace of the Poseidon suite, her suite, was a scene of utter debauchery. Champagne bottles were scattered, plates of half-eaten food, and in the bubbling, illuminated plunge pool were her husband and Sienna Vance, wrapped around each other. She watched, frozen, as Marcus kissed the woman's neck, as he laughed that booming laugh. He was a different person. He was happy. He was a person she had never seen. The chief engineer, a portly man named Stefan, looked at her, then at the scene below, then back at her. His face went pale. Madame Chairwoman, that is... Eleonora held up a single, trembling hand. The ice-cold control she had maintained for days was cracking, replaced by a white, hot, silent rage. She didn't feel hurt. She felt violated. He had brought this trash into her home. She turned to the engineer. Chief, your report on the generators. Have it on my desk by 0600. Her voice was a wisp of steel. Yes, ma'am. She walked, not ran, to her private elevator. She didn't go to her quarters. She went to the ship's secure communications room. Get me my legal team in Geneva, she told the communications officer. Scramble the call, now. While Marcus was playing in the pool, Eleonora was systematically dismantling his life. Paolo, she said into the secure phone, it's Eleonora. I want you to enact Article 7b of my prenuptial agreement, the moral turpitude and public disgrace clause. Yes, I have all the proof I need. I want a full asset freeze on all joint accounts. And I want you to draft a press release for Thorne Capital. Yes, his firm, announcing that the Salvatore Trust is pulling its 40% stake, effective immediately. She hung up, took a deep breath, and called Javier Mendoza in the Poseidon suite. Mr. Mendoza, this is the chairwoman. Is the suite's private line secure? Javier, hiding in the butler's pantry, was shaking. Yes, madame. They are on the terrace. They cannot hear me. Good. Tomorrow night is the captain's gala. My husband, Mr. Thorne, fancies himself a big shot. I want you to find his best tuxedo. Have it pressed. Lay it out for him. Find Miss Vance's most eye-catching dress. Tell them they have a personal invitation from the captain to sit at his table." "Madame?" Javier was confused. You want them at the gala?" "Oh yes, Javier," Eleonora said, a new, cold fire in her voice. "I want them front and center. I want him to feel like the king of the world, right before he sees his entire kingdom burn to the ground. See to it." She hung up. The next day, Marcus was ecstatic. The panic from Beatrice was gone. "Javier, you're the man," he boomed, seeing his best Tom Ford tux laid out. "An invitation from the captain himself, at his table. Sienna, baby, you see? I told you I run this ship. I'm practically the owner." Sienna, oblivious, was preening in a garish, backless, sequined red dress that clung to her like sausage casing. "Does this make my butt look good? I need a photo for my gram." Javier Mendoza simply bowed. "The captain's cocktail reception begins at 1900, sir, in the Acropolis Lounge." As they left the suite, Marcus smelling of expensive cologne and ego, Sienna teetering on stilettos, Javier made one last call. "Captain Volkov, they are on their way, as per the chairwoman's instructions." "Understood," the captain's voice boomed back. "All stations, stand by. The curtain's going up." The Acropolis Lounge was the Odyssey Sovereign's crown jewel, a 3-story marvel of glass and marble, with a grand staircase that snaked down from the deck above. It was designed to inspire awe. Tonight it was at its peak. A 12-piece orchestra played. Champagne flowed from a glittering ice sculpture of the ship. The ship's most elite passengers were all there, dressed in their absolute finest. And into this scene of refined elegance, Marcus and Sienna made their entrance. Sienna's dress was a siren-red beacon of too much, too tight, too short, too many sequins. Marcus was a preening peacock in his Tom Ford tux, his Patek Philippe gleaming as he waved expansively, as if greeting his guests. "See, Sienna. This is power," he whispered, guiding her into the room. "Look at them all. They know who I am." "Marcus, darling," a voice cut through his fantasy. It was Beatrice van der Meer, draped in Harry Winston diamonds, and a judgmental smirk. "Beatrice," Marcus said, his smile tightening. "You're here." "Of course I am. I wouldn't miss the Odyssey Sovereign's official naming gala for the world," she said. Her eyes raked over Sienna. "My goodness, Miss Vance. That is certainly a dress." "Thanks," Sienna said, missing the barb entirely. "It's custom." "I'm sure," Beatrice said dryly. "Marcus, you're just the man I want to see. You simply must meet the owner. She's giving a speech tonight. A fascinating woman. A true Salvatore." Marcus's blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. A what?" "A Salvatore," Beatrice repeated, enjoying this. "You know, the Salvatore family, from Genoa. They've owned this line for, 100 years. The daughter runs it all now, ever since old Enzo passed. Utterly brilliant woman. A real shark, they say. Keeps her family name, of course. Very European." Marcus's brain was frantically trying to connect dots that he had actively ignored for a decade. Eleonora's little hobby, Eleonora's family trust, Eleonora's maiden name, Eleonora Salvatore. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be." Sienna, bored, was tugging on his arm. "Marcus, get me champagne. I'm parched. Who is this old lady?" "Marcus," Beatrice pressed, her eyes glittering with malice. "Are you all right? You look as though you've just seen a ghost." "Oh, wait, silly me. You just heard your wife's family name, didn't you?" "It's her." The realization hit him like a physical blow. The ship, the crew's strange deference, the way Javier had looked at him. The cancelled booking that wasn't cancelled. He wasn't on a vacation he'd stolen. He was in a trap, a floating, billion-dollar cage of his wife's design. "We're leaving," he hissed, grabbing Sienna's arm. "What? No! We just got here. You said we were at the captain's table," Sienna yelped, trying to pull away. "I said, we are leaving. Now." He began to drag her toward the exit, pushing through the glittering crowd. "Don't see me! Don't see me! Don't see me!" He was chanting it in his head. He just had to get back to the suite. He'd lock the door. Bing bong. A soft chime echoed through the lounge. The orchestra stopped. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the podium at the front of the room. Captain Elias Volkov stepped up. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," his deep voice boomed. "Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign's official gala." Marcus froze. He was halfway to the door, trapped by a crowd of people turning to face the stage. "It is my distinct honor," the captain continued, "to serve on this magnificent vessel. But the vision, the drive, the soul of this ship comes from one person." "Oh God," Marcus muttered. "She is a woman of unparalleled standards, a leader in maritime innovation and the heart of the Odyssey line. It is my profound honor to introduce the chairwoman of Odyssey Maritime, Miss Eleonora Salvatore." "Salvatore?" Sienna whispered, finally understanding. "Marcus. Like your wife, Eleonora." The main spotlight swung from the stage to the grand staircase, and there she was. The Acropolis Lounge was not a room. It was a statement. 3 stories high, encased in a sheer wall of structural glass, it offered a 270-degree view of the Santorini caldera, the lights of Fera glittering on the cliffs like a fallen constellation. A 12-piece orchestra played softly under a ceiling of suspended, hand-blown crystal orbs that mimicked the night sky. The air smelled of Dom Perignon, expensive perfume, and the faint, clean salt of the Aegean. Into this temple of refined, old-money elegance, Marcus Thorne and Sienna Vance made their entrance. Marcus was a conquering hero. His Tom Ford tuxedo was immaculate, his Patek Philippe a casual beacon of his success. He'd had 3 glasses of champagne in the suite and felt, quite literally, on top of the world. He was the king, and this was his court. Sienna, by contrast, was a visual car crash. She was poured into a backless, sequined red dress that looked less like haute couture and more like a desperate cry for attention. It was cut too low in the front, too high on the leg, and the fabric had a cheap, plasticine shimmer under the lounge's sophisticated lighting. She teetered on 6-inch Louboutin stilettos, her blonde hair, stiff with hairspray, piled into an elaborate updo. "Oh my God, Marcus," she breathed, her eyes wide as she filmed the room for her Instagram. This is insane. It's like the Titanic, but you know, better." "The best, baby. Only the best," Marcus smirked, guiding her with a possessive hand on the small of her bare back. "You see how they're looking at you? They know you're with me." And people were looking, but it was not with admiration. It was with the cold, appraising and faintly disgusted curiosity of a zoologist observing a new and bafflingly loud species. "I'm going to get us drinks," Marcus said, feeling a surge of pure, uncut ego. "No, wait, Javier said, we're at the captain's table. Let's find it. I want to be sitting when the big man arrives." Marcus Thorne, is that you?" The voice cut through the orchestral music like a velvet-wrapped icicle. Marcus turned, his practiced smile freezing on his face. It was Beatrice van der Meer. She was New York society royalty, a woman whose family had sailed on Eleonora's family's ships for half a century. She was draped in a Dior column gown of midnight blue, and the Harry Winston diamonds at her throat were, as she was fond of saying, part of the endowment. "Beatrice," Marcus said, his smile tightening. He hadn't counted on this. "What a wonderful surprise. You look stunning." Beatrice's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, did a full, slow scan. They started at Sienna's teetering heels, moved up the garish red dress, and settled on her surprised expression. "My goodness," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with lethal politeness. "That is certainly a choice, my dear." "Thanks," Sienna chirped, missing the barb entirely. "It's custom." "I am certain it is," Beatrice said, turning her icy gaze back to Marcus. "But Marcus, darling, what a shock to see you here. I thought you were in Geneva. Or was it Singapore? One of those dreadful, humid money places. And where, pray tell, is darling Eleonora?" Marcus felt the first tiny drop of cold sweat trace a path down his spine. "Beatrice, always a pleasure. Eleonora, she couldn't make it. A last-minute family emergency. In Geneva, yes." "Dreadful. Geneva," Beatrice said, tapping her fan against her chin. "How very strange. I just spoke to her cousin, Antonio, in Milan this morning. We were discussing the sovereign's new ballast system. Fascinating, really. And he said the entire Salvatore clan was in perfect health." Marcus's brain began to short-circuit. The music seemed to get louder, the air thicker. The what?" "The Salvatore clan, dear," Beatrice said, her smile widening. She was enjoying this. "You know, Eleonora's family, from Genoa. They've owned this shipping line for, 100 years, ever since old Enzo Salvatore built the first Odyssey." The dots, which Marcus had so willfully, so arrogantly ignored for a decade, began to connect with the force of a high-speed collision. Eleonora's little hobby, Eleonora's family trust, Odyssey Maritime, Odyssey Sovereign, Eleonora Salvatore. The room began to spin. "It's her ship. Heavens, Marcus!" Beatrice pressed on, her eyes glittering with malice. "You look as though you've just seen a ghost. Oh, wait, silly me. You just heard your wife's family name, didn't you? It is a magnificent vessel. Eleonora has done a marvelous job since her father passed. A true shark, that one. Utterly brilliant. Keeps her family name for all her business, of course. Very European. It's her ship, the cancelled booking that wasn't cancelled. Javier's cold, knowing eyes. The way the crew had parted for them. He thought it was for him. He was a fool. He wasn't on a vacation he'd stolen. He was in a trap, a floating, billion-dollar cage of his wife's design. "We're leaving," he hissed, grabbing Sienna's arm. The grip was no longer possessive. It was a desperate claw. "What? Ow, Marcus!" Sienna yelped, trying to pull her arm free. "We just got here. You said we were at the captain's table. I want my champagne." "I said," Marcus growled, his voice a low, terrified snarl. "We are leaving. Now." He began to physically drag her toward the exit, pushing through the glittering crowd. He ignored the offended looks, the gasps of, "Well, I never," from the passengers he shoved aside. "Don't see me. Don't see me. Don't see me." He was chanting it in his head. He just had to get back to the suite. He'd lock the door. He'd call his lawyer. Bing bong! A soft, melodic chime echoed through the lounge. The orchestra, in the middle of a complex Vivaldi piece, stopped. The lights in the lounge dimmed, and a single, brilliant white spotlight hit the podium at the front of the room. Marcus froze. He was 10 feet from the door, but he was trapped by a wall of people, all of whom were now turning to face the stage. Captain Elias Volkov, stepped up to the podium. He was a tall man with a face carved from granite and a dress uniform that was immaculate. He looked out over the silent crowd. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." His deep, resonant voice boomed, filling the space. "On behalf of the crew, welcome. Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign's official naming gala." "Marcus," Sienna was whispering, her voice a tiny, terrified squeak. "Marcus, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Who is that lady?" "Shut up," Marcus hissed, his throat so tight he could barely breathe. "It is my distinct honor," the captain continued, "to serve as captain of this magnificent vessel. But the vision, the drive, the soul of this ship comes from one person." Marcus was frantically, uselessly, pushing against the back of a large man in a white dinner jacket. There was no escape. "She is a woman of unparalleled standards, a leader in maritime innovation, and the heart of the Odyssey line. It is my profound, personal honor to introduce to you the chairwoman of Odyssey Maritime, Ms. Eleonora Salvatore." Sienna, who had finally put the name and the context together, let out a tiny, choked sound. "Salvatore? Marcus, like your wife, Eleonora." The main spotlight swung from the captain, past the orchestra, and landed, with flawless, theatrical precision, at the top of the grand, sweeping staircase. And there she was. It was not Ellie. It was not the quiet, mousy, supportive wife who planned his dinner parties. This was a queen. She was wearing a custom, floor-length Valentino gown. The color was not just red, it was a deep, dark, arterial crimson. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the impossible, glittering cascade of the Salvatore emeralds, a king's ransom, a necklace he had only seen in photos from the family vault. They made the Bulgari he'd bought Sienna look like a cheap Christmas cracker toy. Her face was serene, not happy, not angry. It was the calm, terrifying serenity of a glacier, utter, cold, unstoppable power. The entire room, 300 of the world's wealthiest people, was silent. They were not just quiet, they were holding their breath. Eleonora began to descend. She didn't just walk, she flowed. She was the owner, and this was her stage. The camera, which had been projecting the captain's face onto the massive, high-definition screens on either side of the stage, now followed her. Her gaze swept the room, cool and appreciative. Then her eyes found him. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. Her gaze, broadcast on 20-foot screens for everyone to see, simply landed. It swept past him, then snapped back, as if zeroing in on a target. She held his gaze for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. The entire room felt the temperature drop by 20 degrees. The technical director in the control booth, a man who had received his instructions from Captain Volkov an hour earlier, did the unthinkable. On the main, left-hand screen, he kept the tight, glorious shot of Eleonora, and on the smaller, inset screen on the right, he put a live feed of Marcus and Sienna, pale, horrified, trapped. A collective, stifled gasp went through the lounge. Eleonora reached the podium, the orchestra swelling, and then fading into a tense, nervous silence. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes still, somehow, locked on his. She began to speak. Her voice was cool, clear, and perfectly amplified. "Welcome," she said. "Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign. For generations, my family has believed that the sea is a place of truth." She was speaking to the entire room, but her words were aimed like missiles at her husband. "We believe in building ships, not just of steel and glass, but of integrity. We believe in loyalty." She savored the word, letting it hang in the air. "We believe that what you do in the shadows, what you whisper in locked rooms, believing no one can hear, always, eventually, comes to the light. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not a speech. This was a public execution. Beatrice Vandermeer snapped her fan shut with a loud, vicious click. She's talking about us, Sienna whispered, her voice trembling. She knows. Oh my God, she knows. Thank you for joining us, Eleonora concluded, raising a champagne flute that a waiter had passed to her. Her eyes were burning into his, to the sovereign, and to the truth. The room, after a beat of stunned silence, exploded in applause. Eleonora, to her credit, didn't break her composure. She smiled, nodded, and stepped down from the podium. But she didn't go to the captain's table. She began to walk. Her crimson dress cut a path through the crowd, which parted for her as if she were royalty. She was flanked, suddenly, by the 2 security officers who had been by the stage, their formal wear doing nothing to hide the fact that they were built like refrigerators. She was walking directly, purposefully, toward Marcus and Sienna. Ellie, please. The name, his pet name for her, was a violation. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to summon the soft, accommodating woman he thought he had married. Marcus took a half-step forward, his hands raised in a grotesque gesture of peace. He was a deal-maker, and this was just a negotiation that had gone public. Ellie, please, he repeated, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, urgent whisper. Not here. Not in public. My God, what are you doing? Let's go back to the suite. We can talk. I can explain everything. This isn't what it looks like. This isn't what it looks like. Eleonora's voice was not a whisper. It was a precise, acoustic marvel, perfectly pitched to carry in the dead, stunned silence of the Acropolis lounge. She didn't move, and the stillness made her seem 1,000 feet tall. The spotlight still on her made the crimson of her dress look like it was still wet. Talk? She repeated, as if the word were a foreign object in her mouth. You had 10 years to talk, Marcus. 10 years of dinners, of anniversaries, of board meetings you never attended. Instead, you chose to lie. You stood in our apartment, in the home my money bought, and you lied to my face about Singapore. Her gaze was so intense, so locked on his, that Marcus felt a physical pressure in his chest. The crowd was gone. The music was gone. There was only this woman, a stranger, dismantling him, word by word. You took our 10th anniversary trip, she continued, her voice a low, vibrating thrum of controlled fury. The maiden voyage I planned, the ship I built, and you used it to bring her. Her eyes, for the first time, flicked to Sienna. It was not a look of rivalry or jealousy. It was the look a queen gives to a fly. You brought her, Eleonora said, her gaze snapping back to Marcus, into the Poseidon suite, the suite my grandfather, Enzo Salvatore, designed and built for my grandmother. You desecrated my home, my legacy, with this. The word this hung in the air, a drop of pure acid. It was too much for Sienna. The fear and confusion she'd been feeling for the last 10 minutes finally curdled into a high-pitched, panicked rage. This wasn't the fantasy. This! Sienna shrieked, her voice cracking. She stepped out from behind Marcus, a gaudy, sequined shield. Don't you call me this. He loves me. Not you. He told me. He said you were a frumpy, old, a business arrangement. He said you were boring in bed, and he was going to leave you. Tell her, Marcus. Tell this captain bitch. Sienna looked at Marcus, her eyes wide, waiting for him to defend her. Marcus was a statue of pure, abject terror. He was a man watching 2 nuclear warheads race toward him from opposite directions. Eleonora, however, merely raised a single, perfectly manicured eyebrow. She let Sienna's entire desperate tirade echo and die in the lounge. She let the raw, ugly truth of it, the things Marcus had said about her, settle over the crowd. Then she gave Sienna her full, undivided attention for 5 seconds. "Miss Vance," Eleonora said, her voice dangerously calm. "I am going to give you one final piece of advice, free of charge. You are in my suite, drinking my champagne, attempting to wear a dress that is, quite frankly, an insult to this lounge, and you are, tragically, with my husband. I believe you have overstayed your welcome. Your services are no longer required." She turned back to Marcus, her dismissal of Sienna so total, so absolute, that it was as if the other woman had simply ceased to exist. "And you," she said. That's when the 2 security officers, men who had been flanking the orchestra and looking like party guests, began to move. They were no longer guests. They were large, impassive, and moving with a purpose. They took up positions just behind Eleonora, flanking her like stone towers. Marcus saw them. He saw the coldness in his wife's eyes. He saw the hundreds of witnesses. He saw his world, which he had believed to be a fortress of steel, revealed to be a house of cards in a hurricane. "Eleonora, I'm sorry," he stammered. "Okay, I'm sorry. I messed up. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. But don't do this. Think of our life. Think of the firm." "The firm?" Eleonora repeated. "Ah, yes, the firm." She gave him a smile. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. "I have been thinking about it a great deal, Marcus. Specifically, for the last 3 hours, while you were otherwise engaged. You see, I had my team in Geneva review your credit. It's problematic. So, as of 1900 hours, all your personal and corporate credit cards were shut down." The blood drained from Marcus's face. This was not a marital spat. This was an execution. My firm," he stammered, the realization finally dawning, a cold, dark sun rising in his gut. "Thorn Capital, the Salvatore Trust, our biggest investor. Oh my God. Ellie, no. You wouldn't." "I would," Eleonora said, her voice flat. "And I did. The moral turpitude and public disgrace clause in our prenuptial agreement was also, as you clearly forgot, a foundational clause in the trust's investment in your company. The press release announcing that the Salvatore Trust is divesting its 40% stake just hit the wires. Your partners, David Chen, all of them. They are aware of your Singapore deal. I imagine your phone, back in the suite, will be quite active. If you can ever find a signal. You... Marcus was sputtering, his mind, once so sharp, now a blank, white field of static. "You ruined me!" He didn't whisper it. He roared it. The last vestige of the charming, powerful Marcus Thorne evaporated, leaving only the small, ugly, greedy creature inside. "You cold-blooded bitch! You ruined me!" "No, Marcus," Eleonora said. She stepped back as he lunged, a pathetic, half-formed movement that the security officers stopped with 2 hands on his chest. She looked at him, not with hate, but with a profound, cold clarity. "I didn't ruin you. You self-destructed. You are a man of such enormous greed. You didn't even bother to read the signature on the checks that paid for your life. You ruined yourself. You just used my ship to do it." She let that final, terrible truth land. Then she turned her head. "Captain Volkov?" The captain was there, as if by magic. "Madame Chairwoman, these passengers have breached our ship-wide code of conduct," Eleonora said, her voice rising, becoming formal, public. "They are a security risk, and They are clearly unwell. We are docking in Mykonos in 1 hour. For a medical disembarkation." "A medical?" Marcus was apoplectic, his face a mask of purple rage. "You're kicking me off the ship in the middle of the night. You'll hear from my lawyers. I will own this ship." Eleonora almost laughed. "What lawyers, Marcus? The ones I paid for, or the ones you can no longer afford? Gentlemen." It was a command. The security officers were professionals. In one smooth, practiced motion, they had Marcus's arms pinned behind his back in a formal escort hold. "You can't do this!" he bellowed, his dignity shredding as he was forced to turn. Sienna, seeing her protector, her billionaire, being handled like a common drunk, finally broke. "No! Let him go! Marcus, my stuff. I have a Louis Vuitton suitcase. You can't." Another officer, one who had been standing by the door, stepped forward and took her, far more gently, by the arm. And so, the walk of shame began. In front of the entire glittering, horrified and utterly fascinated gala, Marcus Thorne, the titan of finance, and Sienna Vance, the Instagram influencer, were marched out of the Acropolis lounge like common criminals. They were walked past the captain's table, past Beatrice Vandermeer, who watched them go with the grim satisfaction of a hanging judge. They were walked through the stunned, silent crowd, a sea of diamonds and judgment, all of whom were capturing this on their phones. Marcus was silent, his face a mask of pure, impotent rage. He knew. He was finished. Sienna, however, was weeping, her mascara running in black, tragic rivers. As she was pulled past the threshold, she made one last, desperate attempt. "My necklace!" she wailed, clutching at the Serpenti necklace. "My Bulgari necklace! He bought it for me! It's mine! You can't take it! Tell her, Marcus! Tell her it's mine!" Eleonora stood, unmoving, in the center of the room. She called out, her voice clear and carrying to the retreating figures. "It was charged to my account, Miss Vance. Consider it a parting gift." Sienna looked back, hope flashing in her tear-streaked eyes. "A reminder," Eleonora finished, "of what happens when you swim with sharks, and you are only bait." The doors to the lounge hissed shut, cutting off Sienna's final, anguished wail. The room was dead silent for 10 full seconds. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's engines. Then, Beatrice Vandermeer, sitting at her table, snapped her expensive silk fan shut with a loud, definitive click. "Well," she said, to no one in particular, "at least the entertainment was first class. Captain, I do believe the orchestra was in the middle of a tango." The music, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, started up again. Eleonora stood alone in the middle of the room, her crimson dress a pool of blood-red victory. She felt a single, uncontrollable tremor in her hand, and she clenched it into a fist at her side. The first part was over. Now, the rest of her life could begin. An hour later, the Odyssey Sovereign made an unscheduled silent stop at the new port in Mykonos. There was no fanfare. At 3:15 a.m., under the harsh glare of the port's sodium lights, Marcus Thorne and Sienna Vance were escorted off the ship by Greek port authorities. Javier Mendoza had, per the chairwoman's instructions, packed their belongings. Or rather, some of their belongings. He had packed one small, rolling suitcase for each of them, containing only the clothes they had worn on board, their toiletries, and their passports. The thousands of dollars of Bulgari and Gucci purchases, the Tom Ford tucks, they were regrettably lost. "Where is the rest of our stuff?" Sienna shrieked at the stone-faced port agent. "I demand to speak to the captain." The port agent, who had been paid handsomely for his discretion by Odyssey Maritime, shrugged. "Your ship, she is gone." Sienna and Marcus turned. The Odyssey Sovereign, her lights blazing, was already gliding out of the harbour, a silent, glittering behemoth that was leaving them in its wake. "Marcus!" Sienna wailed, turning on him. "Do something! You're rich! Fix this!" Marcus just stood there, his expensive linen shirt now hopelessly wrinkled. He reached into his pocket for his Amex. Declined. His Chase Sapphire. Declined. His corporate card. Card holder not authorized. He was, for the first time in his adult life, broke. "The ferry to Athens," the port agent said, pointing to a large, unglamorous and dirty-looking vessel at the far end of the dock. "She leaves at 4 a.m. Cash only." Marcus looked at the ferry. He looked at Sienna. He looked at the empty, dark ocean where his life used to be. The king had been deposed. Aboard the Sovereign, Eleonora Salvatore was not celebrating. She was on the bridge, standing beside Captain Volkov, a heavy wool blanket draped over her Valentino gown. She watched the lights of Mykonos fade until they were just another star in the blackness. Her head of PR, Claire, approached. "Madame Chairwoman, the call is ready." Eleonora nodded and went to the captain's private office. A secure video line was open to New York. On the screen was David Chen, Marcus's partner at Thorn Capital. His face was grey with exhaustion. "Eleonora, my God. Ms. Salvatore, the board. We had no idea." "You had no idea what, David?" Eleonora asked, her voice tired but firm. That you were the Salvatore Trust, that our largest investor, our only significant investor, was, well, you. He always just called you Ellie." "I am aware of what he called me," Eleonora said. "The divestment stands, David." The moral turpitude clause was clear. "And Marcus has breached it." "Eleonora, please," David begged. "You pull out. The firm is gone. We're bankrupt by morning. He's an idiot. He's a pig. But the rest of us, our families, don't let him take us down, too." Eleonora was silent for a long time. She looked at this man who had sat at her dining table, who had laughed at her husband's jokes about her little hobby. "Very well, David," she said. "I will not bankrupt the firm. I will acquire it. I am taking over Thorn Capital. My team will be in your office at 8 a.m. You will all now report to me. You will fire Marcus, strip him of his partnership, and remove his name from the building. Is that clear?" David Chen looked, for a moment, like he might cry with relief. "Yes, Miss Salvatore. Yes, Chairwoman. Absolutely." "Thank you." "Do not thank me," Eleonora said. "Just be better than he was." She cut the connection. She walked out onto the private observation deck, just as the first hint of dawn was staining the sky, a pale, watercolor pink. The sea was calm. The ship was steady. Her ship, her company, her life. She unclasped the Salvatore emeralds, her fingers steady. She had lost a husband. But she had, finally, found herself. She was not the goldfish. She was the ocean. And she was just getting started. Marcus Thorn learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate the woman you think is just a housewife. He didn't just lose his mistress. He lost his job, his reputation, and his access to the billion-dollar empire his wife had been running right under his arrogant nose. Eleonora Salvatore didn't just get revenge. She reclaimed her power, took over his company, and sailed off into the dawn on her own terms. This story is a powerful reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did you think of Eleonora's incredible power move? Let me know your favorite part of her revenge in the comments below. And if you love stories where the powerful get what they deserve, like this video, share it with your friends, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story.
Picture this. You're 6 months pregnant. You've just created an algorithm worth $300 million. You walk into work one morning and discover everything you built has been deleted, vanished, gone. But here's the twist. Your boss didn't just steal your code. He gave it to a 22-year-old intern who falsified his entire college transcript. And now that intern is about to present your life's work to international investors as his own creation. You're standing there, pregnant and powerless, watching your career get handed to someone who can't even spell the programming languages you mastered. What would you do? Most women would file a complaint, maybe hire a lawyer, fight through the system for months. Rebecca Sullivan chose a different path. She decided to let them present her broken algorithm to those $300 million investors. She let them crash and burn in the most spectacular way possible, and then she bought the entire company. This is the story of how a pregnant software engineer turned workplace discrimination into the ultimate revenge, how stolen code became a weapon of corporate destruction, and how underestimating a woman protecting her unborn child became the most expensive mistake a tech CEO ever made. Stick around, because what Rebecca did next will shock you. The keyboard clicking stopped. Rebecca Sullivan stared at her monitor, fingers frozen above the keys, her breath caught in her throat. No, 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 no. The directory was empty. 3 months of code. Gone. Her revolutionary algorithm that could predict market fluctuations with 97% accuracy had been deleted. The timestamp showed yesterday at 11:43 p.m. She had left the office at 6. Someone had accessed her secure partition after hours. Her phone buzzed against the desk. Marcus Wellington's name flashed on the screen. Rebecca, my office. Now. Last 6 months pregnant, she struggled to stand from her ergonomic chair. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress. She pressed her hand to her belly and took 3 deep breaths like her doctor had recommended. The walk to Marcus's corner office felt endless. Other developers avoided eye contact. Sarah's desk sat empty, which was unusual for 8 a.m. Marcus didn't look up from his dual monitors. Close the door. She obeyed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Your code had security vulnerabilities, he said. I had 8. Remove it for company safety. Security vulnerabilities? Her voice pitched higher. I ran penetration tests weekly. That algorithm was bulletproof. Nevertheless, he finally looked at her with pale blue eyes that seemed colder than usual. Tyler Brooks has been assigned to rebuild it. Fresh perspective. Tyler, the intern, 22 years old with more ambition than skill. Marcus, that's 3 months of work. I can fix any vulnerabilities faster than the decision is final. He turned back to his screen. Perhaps you should focus on preparing for maternity leave instead of complex projects. The words hit like a physical blow. She had built Wellington Systems' entire security infrastructure. Her algorithms generated 60% of their revenue. But now, 6 months pregnant, she was suddenly incompetent. I see. Her voice came out deadly quiet. And Tyler understands machine learning optimization? He's young, motivated, unencumbered by personal distractions. Personal distractions. Her pregnancy. I'll need my code restored to continue at the... There's nothing to restore. Tyler's starting fresh. Lies. She had backed up everything to her personal encrypted drive, but admitting that would violate company policy. Walking back to her desk, she noticed the whispers, the sideways glances. Everyone knew before she did. Her phone buzzed again. Text from Sarah. Emergency coffee. Bean there, Betrayal Cafe, now. Rebecca checked her phone obsessively. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. The universal nervous habit when life implodes. Her hands shook as she walked to the elevator. The cafe was crowded with the morning rush. Sarah sat in the corner booth, laptop bag at her feet, tears in her eyes. Becca, there's something else you need to know about Tyler and Marcus. Sarah's hands shook as she opened her laptop in the crowded cafe corner. I shouldn't be showing you this. Screenshots filled the screen. Internal Slack messages between Marcus and Tyler from the past 2 weeks. Marcus. The Sullivan project needs to disappear before the board meeting. Tyler. All of it? Marcus. Everything. I need clean attribution for the Hong Kong deal. Tyler. What about Rebecca? Marcus. Pregnant women are distracted. Performance always drops. Board will understand. Rebecca's coffee grew cold as she read. The Hong Kong deal. $300 million for her algorithm's licensing rights. Her algorithm that Marcus was now giving Tyler credit for. There's more. Sarah scrolled down. Tyler's been documenting your methodology for weeks. Screenshots, recorded screen sessions, everything. How did you get these? David forwarded them. He's been building a case, but Marcus promoted him to CTO last week. Now he's scared to move forward. David Coleman, her mentor for 5 years. The man who had encouraged her to push boundaries and take risks, now silenced by a title and stock options. Look at this timestamp. Sarah pointed to a message dated 3 weeks ago, before Rebecca had even finished the algorithm. Marcus had planned this deletion from the beginning. Her phone rang. Michael, her husband. Hey, how's the morning sickness? She couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not while pregnant and stressed. Better today. Good. Don't let Wellington work you too hard. You're growing our daughter. Our daughter. The baby they had tried for 2 years to conceive. The daughter she had dreamed of teaching to code someday. After hanging up, she stared at the screenshots again. What's Tyler getting out of this? Full-time position after graduation. Senior developer track. Your salary. Your salary. The phrase echoed in her mind. They weren't just stealing her work. They were stealing her future. Sarah, I need you to keep monitoring their communications. Document everything. What are you going to do? I'm going to rebuild my algorithm, better than before, and then I'm going to make sure Marcus Wellington never forgets the name Rebecca Sullivan. I'm not crazy. I know what I built, and I know what they're trying to steal. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Not distress, determination. Back at the office, Tyler sat at her desk. He was using her personalized keyboard, her monitor setup, even her lucky coffee mug with her daughter's ultrasound photo taped inside. Tyler looked up from her desk with practiced innocence. Oh, hey, Rebecca. Marcus said I could use your setup while you're transitioning to lighter duties. Lighter duties. She had built this company's core infrastructure, and now she was being transitioned to lighter duties. Her ultrasound photo had been moved, just slightly, but she had memorized its exact position on the monitor's edge. I'll need my personal items back. Sure, sure. He gestured vaguely at a small cardboard box beside the desk. Her nameplate, her ergonomic wrist rest, her backup hard drives. Wait, her backup drives? She kept her expression neutral while checking the box. 3 external drives all present. But these weren't her originals. They were identical models, still in packaging. Someone had copied her backups and replaced them with empty drives. Tyler, quick question about the algorithm architecture. What's your approach to handling temporal data inconsistencies? His confident smile faltered. Oh, well, I'm still reviewing the requirements. She had written those specifications 6 months ago. Any developer touching her code would know temporal data handling was the algorithm's foundation. And the machine learning model selection? Random forest or gradient boosting? I'm exploring multiple approaches. He had no idea what he was talking about. Marcus wasn't just stealing her work. He was gambling the company's future on an intern who couldn't distinguish machine learning models. Her desk phone rang. Jennifer Walsh from HR. Rebecca, could you come to my office? Just a routine check-in. The walk to HR felt like a funeral march. Other employees suddenly found their keyboards fascinating as she passed. Jennifer's office smelled like vanilla candles and impending doom. A manila folder sat prominently on the desk. Please sit. How are you feeling? The pregnancy progressing well? Small talk. The prelude to corporate execution. Everything's fine. The baby's due in December. Wonderful. Now Marcus has expressed some concerns about your recent performance metrics. Performance metrics. She had delivered every project early for 3 years running. Jennifer opened the folder. Missed deadlines, code quality issues, communication gaps with your team. Each accusation was fabricated. But she realized the true strategy: create a paper trail justifying her termination before she could blow the whistle. I'd like to see these specific performance issues documented. Of course. Here's the report Tyler submitted yesterday. Tyler's report. 5 pages of detailed criticism about code he had never seen, methodologies he couldn't understand, in timeline failures that never happened. This is interesting. Tyler mentions my algorithm's inefficient recursive loops, but the current implementation uses iterative processing. Jennifer's expression didn't change. Perhaps you could clarify that with Tyler during your transition meetings. Transition meetings. They weren't even pretending anymore. Jennifer, I need to ask directly, am I being demoted because of my pregnancy? Oh, heavens no, we're completely supportive of expecting mothers. This is purely performance-based. Pure performance. Like the performance Marcus and Tyler were orchestrating to steal $3 million in intellectual property. Walking back to her desk, Rebecca pressed both hands to her lower back, stretching slightly. The unconscious gesture every pregnant woman makes when stress meets physical discomfort. Her temporary workstation had been moved to the corner. No windows, no privacy. A clear message to everyone watching. But they had made one crucial mistake. Her personal laptop had full access to the company's development servers, and she still remembered every line of code they had deleted. That evening, Rebecca sat in her car in the garage for 20 minutes, unable to face telling Michael what had happened. The silence stretched. The garage door opener hummed. The engine ticked as it cools. Finally, she whispered to her belly, "Mommy's going to fix this." At home, her laptop showed an impossible message. Your algorithm has been submitted for patent under Tyler Brooks, primary inventor. The patent application displayed Tyler's name in bold letters. Primary inventor, filed yesterday at 4:37 p.m. Rebecca Sullivan wasn't mentioned anywhere. Michael found her at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., laptop glowing, tears streaming down her face. "Becca, what's wrong?" She couldn't speak, just pointed at the screen. He read over her shoulder, his software engineer's mind quickly grasping the implications. "They filed a patent for your work." "Not just filed, Tyler's listed as the sole inventor, like I never existed." Michael's jaw tightened. In 12 years together, she had rarely seen him truly angry. This is theft, straight-up intellectual property theft. It's more than that. She scrolled through the technical specifications. They've submitted my exact code architecture, my optimization techniques, even my variable naming conventions. But they've introduced 3 critical errors that will cause system failures under heavy load. Errors Tyler doesn't understand enough to fix? Exactly. They're about to license a broken algorithm to Hong Kong for $300 million. Michael sat beside her, processing the implications. What happens when it fails? Wellington Systems gets sued into bankruptcy. The Hong Kong investors lose their money. Tyler gets blamed for the faulty code. And Marcus? Marcus walks away clean. He can claim he trusted a young developer who overpromised and underdelivered. The baby kicked, and she realized she had been unconsciously rubbing her belly. Stress wasn't good for either of them. "We're calling Grace in the morning," Michael said. "Your sister specializes in employment law." Grace doesn't know tech industry dynamics, but she knows discrimination law, and she knows you. Rebecca's phone buzzed. Email from Marcus at 2:43 a.m. Subject, performance improvement plan. "Rebecca, effective immediately, you'll be placed on a 90-day performance improvement plan. Failure to meet objectives will result in termination. Please report to HR at 8 a.m. to review your new responsibilities. M. Wellington Performance Improvement Plan. Corporate death sentence. They were accelerating the timeline. They're trying to fire me before I can expose the theft." Michael read the email over her shoulder. "Can they do that while you're pregnant?" "They can if they've documented enough fake performance issues." She closed the laptop. "But they made one mistake." "What's that?" "They assume I'll fight this through normal channels, HR complaints, employment lawyers, wrongful termination suits." "What are you thinking?" She smiled for the first time in days. "I'm thinking Marcus Wellington has never seen what happens when you truly piss off a pregnant software engineer with nothing left to lose. They want to destroy my career? Fine. But they picked the wrong woman to mess with. I built their empire. I can tear it down just as easily." The next morning, she called in sick. First sick day in 3 years. But instead of resting, she drove to her sister's law office. Grace Sullivan occupied the 20th floor of downtown's most prestigious legal building. Labor law had made her rich, and her track record made her feared. Tell me everything, Grace said after the receptionist brought coffee. Rebecca outlined the deletion, the conspiracy, the patent theft, the performance improvement plan. Grace took notes, occasionally asking sharp questions. The patent filing is the smoking gun, Grace finally said. We can prove theft of intellectual property, but the discrimination angle is trickier. How? They'll claim the performance issues preceded your pregnancy announcement. We need to prove causation. What about the Slack messages Sarah found? Helpful, but they need context. We need more evidence of discriminatory intent. Rebecca hesitated. What if I could prove their algorithm will fail catastrophically? That Tyler doesn't understand the code he's claiming credit for? How? I could introduce subtle errors in the optimization routines. Errors that won't surface during testing, but will cause massive failures under real-world load. Grace leaned back. That's sabotage. That's justice. Grace unconsciously touched her own belly. She had been pregnant 3 years ago when fighting a similar case, and the gesture connected her to Rebecca's vulnerability. There's another option, Grace said slowly. What if instead of sabotage, we let Tyler's incompetence speak for itself? Meaning, give him enough rope to hang himself, and document everything when he does. Back at Wellington Systems, Rebecca discovered Marcus had called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow to fast-track the Hong Kong deal using Tyler's improved algorithm. The email had been sent to all senior staff except her. Emergency board meeting, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tyler Brooks would present the revolutionary new algorithm to secure immediate approval for the Hong Kong licensing deal. Rebecca stared at her laptop screen in the company parking lot. She had driven in despite calling sick, knowing Marcus would accelerate everything once she was out of the picture. Sarah's text confirmed her suspicions. They're panicking. David's been asked to prepare technical documentation overnight. Tyler looks terrified. Of course Tyler looked terrified. He was about to present complex machine learning concepts he didn't understand to a board of investors who would ask detailed questions. But Marcus had a solution for that too. Another email, this one internal to the development team. All technical questions during tomorrow's presentation will be directed to David Coleman, CTO. Tyler will handle high-level overview only. Perfect. David would provide technical credibility while Tyler took credit. Marcus would close the deal based on stolen work, unless the algorithm failed during the demo. Rebecca opened her development environment and accessed the server logs. Tyler had been making changes to her code for 3 days. Small modifications, mostly cosmetic. He was trying to put his fingerprints on her work without understanding its underlying logic. One change caught her attention. He had optimized the temporal data processing by removing what he assumed were redundant validation checks. Those weren't redundant. They were fail-safes preventing catastrophic memory overflow under high-volume processing. Her phone rang. David Coleman. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. The algorithm Tyler's presenting tomorrow. Is it going to work? Direct question. David suspected but couldn't prove what was happening. Define work. Will it perform as promised in the Hong Kong demo? She chose her words carefully. The algorithm will run exactly as Tyler has configured it. Silence on the line. David understood the implications. Jesus, Rebecca, what has Marcus gotten us into? You tell me. You're the CTO now. I never wanted this promotion. He offered it right after your code disappeared. I should have refused. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And now I'm complicit in something that's going to destroy people's careers. Not people. Women, pregnant women who built the technology you're about to license. More silence. Then what can I do? You could tell the board the truth. Marcus will destroy me. I've got a mortgage, kids in college. I've got a baby coming and no job security. But I'm still going to fight this. How? By being in that boardroom tomorrow when Tyler's algorithm fails. You weren't invited. I'm still an employee, and I'm going to exercise my right to observe board meetings regarding projects I developed. Marcus will throw you out. Let him in front of investors. While I'm visibly pregnant, that'll look great for the company's discrimination lawsuit. After hanging up, Rebecca sat in the parking lot watching other employees arrive for work. Normal people with normal jobs, unaware that their company's future depended on a stolen algorithm modified by someone who didn't understand it. She counted their cars, 37 employees, 37 families depending on Wellington Systems surviving what was about to happen. That evening, she prepared for war. Grace had overnighted a legal packet, discrimination complaint forms, intellectual property theft documentation, and a cease and desist letter regarding the fraudulent patent application. Michael helped her organize the evidence, screenshots of Tyler's code changes, documentation of her original algorithm's architecture, timestamps proving she had developed everything before Tyler joined the company. "You sure about this approach?" he asked. "They're betting that I'll stay quiet to protect my job, but they already destroyed my job. Now I've got nothing to lose and everything to expose. What if the algorithm doesn't fail? What if Tyler gets lucky?" She pulled up the code analysis on her laptop. "It's not about luck. Tyler removed the memory management protocols I spent 6 weeks optimizing. Under demo conditions with limited data, the algorithm will run fine. But with real-world volume, millions of transactions per second, it'll crash within hours." And then Hong Kong investors realize they have licensed defective software. Wellington Systems faces breach of contract lawsuits. Stock price collapses. Marcus loses everything. While you're unemployed and pregnant. While I'm free to start my own company with investors who'll pay triple for an algorithm that actually works. Rebecca performed the pregnant woman's bedtime ritual, turning from side to side trying to find a comfortable position. The universal struggle every pregnant woman knows, while her mind raced with tomorrow's confrontation plans. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meeting boardroom tomorrow. Bring evidence. Trust no one. A friend." The text came from a burner phone, untraceable number. But someone inside Wellington Systems knew about her situation and wanted to help. Rebecca stared at the message until Michael stirred beside her. "Who's texting at 3 a.m.? "I don't know. Someone who knows about tomorrow's board meeting." Michael read the message over her shoulder. "Could be a trap. Marcus trying to get you to bring evidence he can confiscate. Or someone with their own agenda." She had learned not to trust anyone at Wellington Systems, but desperation made strange allies. At 7 a.m., she dressed carefully. Professional blazer that emphasized her pregnancy, hair pulled back severely, no makeup except lipstick. She wanted to look pale, stressed, victimized. Grace had coached her on optics. Pregnant women facing discrimination get sympathy from investors. Use that. The Wellington Systems parking lot buzzed with unusual activity, 3 luxury cars she didn't recognize. The Hong Kong investors had arrived early. Inside, the atmosphere felt electric. Employees whispered in clusters. Tyler paced near the conference room, reviewing notes frantically. Sarah intercepted her at the elevator. "What are you doing here? Marcus said you were sick." "I got better. Amazing what a good night's sleep can do." "Rebecca, he's furious you're here. He's already talking about security." "Let him call security. That'll look great, removing a pregnant employee from observing a meeting about her own work." The elevator opened. David Coleman stood inside, looking haggard. "Rebecca, you shouldn't be here." "Says who?" "Says the man who signs my paychecks." She stepped into the elevator. "Then you better make sure those paychecks keep coming." Floor 18, executive conference room. Through the glass walls, she could see Marcus gesturing animatedly to 3 American businessmen in expensive suits. Tyler sat at the presentation computer, looking green. "David," she said quietly, "when Tyler's demo fails, are you going to take responsibility?" "The demo won't fail. I've tested the algorithm myself." "With how much data?" "Standard test data sets, a few thousand transactions. International markets process 40 million transactions daily." David's face went white. 40 million? That's what they're paying $300 million for. Real-world scale, not toy data sets. The elevator opened. Marcus stood waiting, his face thunderous. "Rebecca, you're not authorized for this meeting. I'm an employee observing a presentation of technology I developed. You're a contractor on performance improvement. Your presence isn't required." Contractor. He had demoted her to contractor status overnight. Then I'll observe from my desk. She pointed through the glass wall. Her former desk, now Tyler's, had a clear view of the conference room. Marcus couldn't argue without looking petty. He stepped aside, jaw clenched. At Tyler's desk, she had perfect audio through the intercom system he had left active. Every word of the presentation would be clearly audible. Her phone buzzed. Text from the unknown number. Check your email now. New message in her inbox. From a Wellington Systems internal address she didn't recognize. The subject line made her heart race. Tyler Brooks, academic fraud documentation. The email contained Tyler's complete academic record, fabricated grades in advanced computer science courses, falsified recommendations from professors. Even his college thesis was plagiarized. Marcus had hired an intern with fake credentials to steal her algorithm. But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. The email signature revealed her mysterious ally, Amanda Thompson, tech journalist, Forbes magazine. Amanda had been investigating Tyler for weeks. Academic fraud led to employment. Fraud led to intellectual property theft. The story was already written. I'm waiting only for today's board meeting to provide the conclusion. I'm not paranoid. There really is a conspiracy, and now I have proof. Through the glass wall, she watched Marcus call the meeting to order. The international investors sat attentively as Tyler connected his laptop to the projector. Her phone buzzed again. Amanda Thompson. Recording everything. When the algorithm fails, I'll need your statement for the article. When, not if. Tyler began his presentation with obvious nervousness. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to present our revolutionary predictive algorithm. Revolutionary. Her algorithm, described by someone who hadn't written a single original line of code. Rebecca unconsciously placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby kick as stress hormones surged. The universal protective gesture pregnant women make when confronting threats to their future. The presentation proceeded smoothly through the theoretical overview. Tyler had memorized her documentation well, but theory was easy. Implementation was where frauds exposed themselves. Robert Harrison, the lead international investor, raised his hand. Mr. Brooks, can you walk us through the temporal data processing methodology? Tyler's confident smile wavered. Certainly, the temporal processing utilizes advanced algorithms to handle time-based data inconsistencies. Meaningless word salad. Harrison exchanged glances with his colleagues. More specifically, Harrison continued, how do you prevent memory overflow during high-volume processing periods? Tyler looked desperately at David, but David couldn't answer without revealing the removed fail-safes. The algorithm self-optimizes to prevent any overflow scenarios, Tyler stammered. Rebecca almost laughed. Self-optimization. Tyler had just claimed her algorithm was sentient. Harrison requests a live demonstration with real international trading data. Tyler's hands shake as he begins uploading 40 million transaction records into the system. Excellent, Harrison said. We've brought a sample of our actual trading data. 43 million transactions from last quarter. Let's see your algorithm in action. Tyler's face went ashen. Beside him, David shifted uncomfortably. Well, typically we use smaller data sets for demonstrations. Mr. Brooks, Harrison interrupted smoothly, we're licensing this technology for $300 million. I assume it can handle the volume we'll be processing daily? Marcus stepped in. Of course, Tyler. Please proceed with the full data set. No escape. Tyler's hands visibly shook as he loaded the data file. 43 million records began uploading to the system. Through the intercom, Rebecca heard every word. Her algorithm, the real version with proper fail-safes, could process this data in 18 minutes. Tyler's modified version would crash in 5. The upload completed. Tyler clicked Execute Analysis. The system hummed to life. Processing indicators showed normal operation. For 3 minutes, everything looked perfect. Then the memory usage indicators began climbing. 60%, 70, 80. Tyler noticed first, frantically clicking refresh on the monitoring dashboard. Just optimizing the data structures. 90%, 95. David leaned over, whispered something urgent. Tyler's face went white. Perhaps we should use a smaller sample, Tyler suggested weakly. Absolutely not, Harrison replied. This is precisely the volume our production systems require. 98%, 99. Through the glass wall, Rebecca watched Marcus realize something was catastrophically wrong. His eyes found hers across the office space. She gave him her brightest smile. Memory usage hit 100%. The system froze. Every screen in the conference room displayed the same error message. Memory overflow. Process terminated. System recovery required. Silence filled the conference room. Harrison's expression remained professionally neutral, but his colleagues began whispering rapidly. Technical difficulties happen, Marcus said quickly. David, can you restart the system? David tried. The algorithm had crashed so hard it corrupted the server's memory allocation. Full system restart required. 20 minutes minimum. Mr. Wellington, Harrison said calmly, we've been evaluating predictive algorithms for 18 months. I've never seen one crash so catastrophically on standard production data. This is highly unusual. Tyler, explain what went wrong. Tyler looked like he might vomit. The data volume exceeded. There might be a configuration issue. What kind of configuration issue causes complete system failure? Harrison pressed. Tyler had no answer. He didn't understand the code well enough to explain its failures. Rebecca's phone buzzed. Amanda Thompson. Got everything recorded. When do you want to go on record about the theft? Now. The answer was now. In the silence that followed, the only sounds were the air conditioning humming, Tyler's rapid breathing, and the distant keyboard clicking from the main office. Rebecca felt the baby kick, a reminder of what she was fighting for. She stood from Tyler's desk and walked to the conference room. Every eye turned to her as she knocked on the glass door. Marcus's face showed pure fury, but he couldn't refuse her entry in front of investors without looking unprofessional. Gentlemen, she said, addressing the international investment team directly, I believe I can explain the system failure. And you are? Harrison asked. Rebecca Sullivan, senior software developer. I'm the original architect of the algorithm you just watched crash. The room went dead silent. Mr. Brooks, Harrison turned to Tyler, you said you developed this algorithm. Tyler opened his mouth, but no words came. There seems to be some confusion, Marcus interjected. Rebecca worked on early prototypes, but Tyler led the development team. Interesting, Harrison said. Ms. Sullivan, can you explain why the algorithm failed? Certainly. The system crashed because someone removed the memory management protocols I spent 6 weeks optimizing. Without those fail-safes, high-volume processing causes cascading memory overflow. She pulled out her laptop, opened her original code documentation. Here's the architecture as I designed it, and here's what Tyler modified. Harrison studied both versions. As a former software engineer himself, he immediately spotted the critical differences. Mr. Brooks, Harrison said quietly, did you remove these memory management protocols? Tyler looked desperately at Marcus. No help was coming. I was optimizing the code for efficiency by removing the safety mechanisms that prevent exactly this type of failure. Ms. Sullivan, Harrison turned back to her. When did you develop this algorithm? I began work 14 weeks ago. Full implementation was completed 9 weeks ago, 3 weeks before Mr. Brooks joined the company as an intern. I built this. Every line of code, every optimization, every fail-safe. And they thought they could steal it because I'm pregnant and vulnerable. The international investors began conferring in rapid discussion. Marcus looked like he was watching his empire crumble in real time, which Rebecca realized he was. Harrison stood and addressed Marcus directly. Mr. Wellington, we'll need to discuss some serious concerns about intellectual property ownership before proceeding further. Harrison's words hit the conference room like a bomb. Intellectual property ownership concerns meant the international investors suspected fraud. Marcus tried to maintain control. Gentlemen, there's obviously been a misunderstanding about development roles. Has there? Harrison opened his tablet, scrolled through documents. Ms. Sullivan, we'd like to understand the timeline more clearly. You said you completed the algorithm 9 weeks ago? Correct. I can provide server logs, code commits, and version control history proving every development milestone. Tyler tried to speak. She worked under my supervision. Mr. Brooks, Harrison's voice carried ice, you've been employed here for exactly 3 weeks. Unless you possess time travel capabilities, You couldn't have supervised 14 weeks of development. The other international investors weren't whispering anymore. They were staring at Marcus with expressions that promised lawsuits. Marcus, David Coleman finally spoke up, I think we need to clarify the actual development history. Marcus shot David a warning look, but David continued anyway. Rebecca Sullivan is the lead architect and sole developer of this algorithm. Tyler Brooks was assigned to document her work for knowledge transfer purposes. Knowledge transfer. Even David was spinning the truth to save his own career. But Harrison was too experienced for corporate doublespeak. Mr. Coleman, are you saying Mr. Brooks plagiarized Ms. Sullivan's work? I'm saying there may have been confusion about attribution. There's no confusion, Rebecca interrupted. Tyler Brooks submitted a patent application listing himself as primary inventor of my algorithm. That's not confusion. That's theft. She pulled out the patent documents Grace had prepared. Filed 3 days ago, zero mention of my contributions. Complete appropriation of intellectual property I developed while employed by Wellington Systems. Harrison examined the patent filing. His expression grew colder by the page. Mr. Wellington, are you aware your employee filed fraudulent patent claims? Marcus's composure finally cracked. Tyler acted without authorization. This is a rogue employee situation. Rogue employee? Tyler's voice cracked. You told me to file the patent. You said Rebecca was being transferred to light duties. The room exploded into chaos. Tyler had just admitted Marcus orchestrated the theft. Rebecca's hand instinctively went to her lower back, supporting her pregnancy weight while standing through the confrontation. The universal pregnant woman gesture that highlighted her vulnerability in this corporate battlefield. Harrison raised his hand for silence. Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing either gross negligence or deliberate fraud. Either way, this licensing deal is suspended pending investigation. Suspended? Marcus's voice pitched higher. We have contracts, commitments. We have a $300 million agreement for technology that doesn't work, developed by someone who apparently stole it from a pregnant employee. Harrison stood. Our legal team will be in contact. The international investors filed out without another word. $300 million walked out the door with them. Marcus turned on Rebecca with fury. Congratulations. You've just destroyed this company. I didn't destroy anything. You did. When you decided my pregnancy made me expendable. You're fired. Security will escort you out. Actually, Grace Sullivan appeared in the doorway. She's not fired. She's filing a discrimination complaint with the EEOC. Grace. Her sister had been watching from the lobby, waiting for the perfect, dramatic moment. In a theft of intellectual property lawsuit, in a fraudulent patent claim, and depending on what the international investors decide, possibly criminal charges for wire fraud. Marcus looked around the room desperately. David avoided eye contact. Tyler had slumped into a chair, realizing his career was over before it started. This is extortion, Marcus stammered. This is justice, Grace replied calmly. My client built technology worth hundreds of millions. Your company tried to steal it because she's pregnant. That's going to be an expensive mistake. Amanda Thompson stepped into the conference room, recording device visible. Mr. Wellington, I'm Amanda Thompson from Forbes. I've been investigating academic fraud in the tech industry. Would you care to comment on Tyler Brooks' falsified credentials? Academic fraud. The final nail in the coffin. Marcus stared at Amanda's recorder. No comment. What about your hiring practices? Do you typically employ interns with fabricated academic records to steal intellectual property from pregnant employees? Security, Marcus shouted. But security was smart enough to stay away from a pregnant woman, her lawyer sister, and a national technology journalist. They thought I was weak because I'm pregnant. They forgot pregnant women are protecting the future. That makes us dangerous. Grace handed Marcus a thick legal packet. Cease and desist on all use of Rebecca's algorithm. Withdrawal of Tyler's fraudulent patent application. Full restoration of Rebecca's position and back pay. We'll also need access to all communications between you and Tyler regarding the theft. And if I refuse, then we'll see you in federal court. Discrimination, theft, fraud. The Forbes article will publish either way. Marcus looked at the packet like it contained radioactive material. Amanda Thompson stepped closer. Mr. Wellington, one more question. How many other pregnant employees have you reassigned to lighter duties after they developed valuable technology? The color drained from Marcus's face. He had just realized this wasn't about one algorithm theft. This was about a pattern of discrimination that could destroy him personally. Rebecca sat in the empty conference room after everyone left, listening to the building's normal sounds returning. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people working normal jobs. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "Mommy won. Now we can build something better." Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert Harrison. "Ms. Sullivan, our investors would like to discuss licensing your algorithm directly. Would you be available for dinner tonight?" The text from Harrison changed everything. Not revenge, opportunity. Rebecca sat in her car in the Wellington Systems parking lot, reading the message again. The international investors wanted to license her algorithm directly, not through Wellington Systems. Through her. Her phone rang, Grace calling from the lobby. "How badly do you want to destroy Marcus completely?" "What do you mean?" "Harrison's offer isn't just business. It's strategic. If you license directly to the international consortium, Wellington Systems loses their biggest potential contract. Stock price will collapse. Marcus will face shareholder lawsuits for mismanagement. And Tyler? Tyler's finished. Academic fraud, patent fraud, theft of intellectual property. No tech company will touch him." Rebecca felt the baby kick. Her daughter would grow up knowing her mother hadn't just fought back. She had won. "Grace, set up the meeting, but I have conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "I want to buy Wellington Systems when the stock price crashes. I want to hire every employee Marcus fires when he tries to cut costs. And I want to offer Tyler one chance at redemption." "Tyler, after everything he did?" "Tyler's 22 and stupid. Marcus is 45 and evil. There's a difference." That evening, Harrison's team met her at the downtown Four Seasons. 3 international investors, 2 patent attorneys, and 1 venture capitalist who specialized in intellectual property licensing. "Ms. Sullivan," Harrison began over appetizers, "we've verified your algorithm's development history. Your original code with proper fail-safes processes our data flawlessly. In 18 minutes," she confirmed, "with 97% accuracy on market predictions. We'd like to license the technology for 5 years, exclusive rights for international markets." The venture capitalist slid a contract across the table. The number made Rebecca's eyes widen. $50 million, upfront licensing fee, plus royalties. $50 million for 18 minutes of flawless processing that Tyler had destroyed with amateur modifications. "There's one complication," Harrison continued. "Wellington Systems claims ownership of the algorithm through your employment contract." "That's not a complication," Grace interjected. "That's leverage. Rebecca can grant licensing rights independently while employed. But if Wellington Systems fires her for discrimination, they lose all claim to future developments." The patent attorney nodded approvingly. "Elegant solution. The discrimination complaint actually strengthens her intellectual property position." Harrison smiled. "Ms. Sullivan, I believe you're about to become very wealthy." "And very powerful," the venture capitalist added. $50 million in startup capital could fund a serious competitor to Wellington Systems." A competitor. She had never considered that possibility. "What would you need to build a competitive firm?" Harrison asked. "Experienced developers who understand my methodologies, computing infrastructure, and about 40 employees who are about to lose their jobs when Wellington Systems implodes." "The developers currently working at Wellington?" "Exactly. Marcus will fire half the company trying to stay solvent. I'll hire them at competitive salaries with equity participation." Grace leaned forward. "Rebecca, are you talking about launching a startup?" "I'm talking about launching a revolution." The baby kicked again, stronger this time, her daughter approving of Mommy's business plans. "There's one more thing," Rebecca continued. "I want to offer Tyler Brooks a junior developer position." The table went quiet. "After he tried to steal your work?" Harrison asked. "Tyler's a symptom, not the disease. Marcus exploited his ambition and inexperience. Give Tyler proper mentorship under someone who won't ask him to commit fraud, and he might become a decent programmer." "That's remarkably generous. That's strategic. Tyler knows Marcus's other schemes. He knows which developers are being discriminated against. He knows where the bodies are buried. The venture capitalist smiled, and a reformed whistleblower makes excellent press for your new company's culture. Rebecca unconsciously did what every pregnant entrepreneur does. One hand on her belly, one hand signing documents that would secure her baby's future. The universal multitasking gesture of expecting mothers building empires. Contracts were signed over dessert, $50 million in licensing fees, exclusive development rights, and a commitment to fund her startup with an additional $20 million in Series A investment. Walking back to her car, Grace shook her head in amazement. You just turned workplace discrimination into the best thing that ever happened to you. I turned workplace discrimination into a cautionary tale about underestimating pregnant women. What's your first move? Tomorrow morning, I'm walking into Wellington Systems and offering to buy the company. With what leverage? Marcus is about to face shareholder lawsuits, regulatory investigation, and public humiliation. I'm going to offer him a way out that lets him salvage some dignity. And if he refuses, then I'll destroy him completely and buy the company from the bankruptcy court. They wanted to make me invisible. Instead, they made me unstoppable. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emergency, Marcus just called all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning. Massive layoffs expected. David's been fired. Tyler's having panic attack in bathroom. The empire was collapsing faster than expected. At home, Rebecca and Michael sat in the nursery they had been preparing, surrounded by baby furniture and dreams of their daughter's future. The contrast was surreal, planning a peaceful baby's room while orchestrating the downfall of a corrupt company. She's going to grow up knowing her mother never backed down, Rebecca whispered to her belly. At 6 a.m., Rebecca's phone rang. Marcus Wellington calling personally. His voice was broken. Rebecca, we need to talk. I think we can reach an arrangement. Marcus's voice sounded hollow through the phone. Rebecca, I've made mistakes, serious mistakes, but destroying the company hurts everyone. I'm not destroying anything, Marcus. I'm fixing what you broke. What do you want? Your resignation, Tyler's severance package instead of criminal charges, and first option to buy Wellington Systems when the stock price bottoms out. Silence stretched across the line. You want to buy the company? I want to rebuild it with proper leadership, proper values, and proper respect for pregnant employees. The board will never approve. The board will approve anything that saves them from shareholder lawsuits, especially when Forbes publishes Amanda Thompson's article this afternoon. Marcus's breathing grew ragged. What about the employees? Sarah, David, all the developers? I'll offer positions to everyone you haven't fired, better salaries, equity participation, and a company culture that doesn't discriminate against women. And me? You get to resign quietly with a modest severance, or you get to fight federal discrimination charges while your company crumbles around you. The choice was obvious. At 9 a.m., Rebecca walked into Wellington Systems carrying a leather briefcase and wearing her best maternity business suit. Heads turned as she passed through the office space. Sarah intercepted her at the elevator. Rebecca, what's happening? Marcus called emergency meetings all morning. Half the senior staff is cleaning out their desks. Change is happening. Good change. The elevator doors opened to reveal Tyler Brooks, red-eyed and carrying a cardboard box. Tyler, she said gently, wait for me in conference room B. We need to talk. I'm fired. Security's escorting me out. Security works for me now. Tyler's confusion was evident, but he nodded and headed for the conference room. The boardroom buzzed with nervous energy. 5 board members, 2 attorneys, and Marcus looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. Gentlemen, Rebecca began, taking her seat at the head of the table. I'm here to discuss the acquisition of Wellington Systems. The lead board member, Robert Morrison, cleared his throat. Ms. Sullivan, while we appreciate your interest, you are hardly in a position to acquire a company of this size. She opened her briefcase and distributed copies of the international licensing agreement. $50 million in immediate capital, plus the commitment for Series A funding. Actually, I'm in an excellent position. And given that your stock price will drop 70% when the Forbes article publishes, I'm the only viable buyer you'll have. Morrison studied the contracts. $70 million in available capital. That's more than our current market cap, which will be cut in half by noon today. Marcus finally spoke. What are your terms? Full acquisition at current market price minus projected losses from the international deal cancellation. All employee contracts honored at current salaries plus 10% raises. Complete management restructure. And current management? Marcus resigns immediately with 6 months severance. David Coleman gets promoted to Chief Technology Officer under my leadership. Tyler Brooks gets a second chance as junior developer with strict supervision. Tyler? Morrison looked confused. The intern who falsified his credentials? The intern who was manipulated by unethical management into committing fraud. There's a difference. She pulled out another document. I've also prepared a comprehensive diversity and inclusion policy. No more light duties for pregnant employees. No more stolen credit for women's innovations. No more discrimination disguised as performance management. The room fell silent as the board members processed the implications. Ms. Sullivan, Morrison said finally, you're essentially proposing to save us from our own misconduct. I'm proposing to buy a company with excellent employees and terrible leadership. Fix the leadership, restore the culture, and Wellington Systems becomes profitable again. Her phone buzzed. Amanda Thompson's Forbes article had just published how academic fraud and pregnancy discrimination nearly destroyed a tech company. Morrison's phone began ringing immediately, shareholders demanding answers. Gentlemen, Rebecca said calmly, you have about 30 minutes before your stock price enters free fall. I suggest we expedite this discussion. 25 minutes later, she owned Wellington Systems. Walking through the office space as the new CEO, she felt every eye following her. Some confused, some hopeful, some terrified. She called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. First, though, she had a conversation to finish. Tyler sat in conference room B looking like a broken man. At 22, his career was over before it started. Tyler, she began, sitting across from him, you have two choices. Disappear and hope no one connects your name to academic fraud, or stay and rebuild your reputation through honest work. Why would you offer me anything? I stole your algorithm. You did what Marcus told you to do. Young people make stupid decisions when authority figures pressure them. I falsified my grades, my recommendations, everything. Then you understand the value of truth. I'm offering you a chance to learn what ethical programming looks like. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve redemption. Deserve has nothing to do with it. I need developers who've seen what corruption looks like. You'll never commit fraud again because you've lived the consequences. Tyler unconsciously pushed his glasses up his nose repeatedly. The nervous gesture of young programmers facing life-changing moments, exactly what Rebecca had done at 22 when facing her first major career decision. At the all-hands meeting, she stood before 43 employees whose futures hung in the balance. My name is Rebecca Sullivan. As of this morning, I'm your new CEO. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Wellington Systems has incredible talent, innovative technology, and enormous potential. What we lacked was ethical leadership. That changes today. She outlined her vision: competitive salaries, equity participation for all employees, transparent promotion criteria, and zero tolerance for discrimination. Some of you are wondering about Marcus. He's resigned to pursue other opportunities. Some are wondering about Tyler. He's staying as a junior developer with full transparency about his past mistakes. Sarah raised her hand. What about the international deal? Canceled with Wellington Systems, but I've licensed the algorithm directly to international investors for $50 million. That money funds our operations, your raises, and our expansion plans. David Coleman spoke up from the back. What's our first priority? Building the best predictive analytics company in the industry. We have the technology, the talent, and now the funding. We're going to revolutionize how businesses understand market patterns. They tried to steal my future. Instead, they gave me an empire. The baby kicked as she concluded the meeting. Her daughter would grow up knowing her mother had turned discrimination into triumph, theft into justice, and corporate corruption into a billion-dollar business. 6 months later, Sullivan Analytics had 3 major licensing deals, 47 employees, in a company culture that Forbes called the gold standard for tech industry ethics. Tyler Brooks had become one of their most dedicated programmers, working under Sarah's mentorship to rebuild his skills with integrity. Marcus Wellington had started a consulting firm that failed within 3 months. No one in the tech industry would work with him. And Rebecca Sullivan, holding her 3-month-old daughter during a board meeting via video call, had proved that underestimating a pregnant woman's determination was the most expensive mistake a corrupt CEO could make. As the story ended, Rebecca did what every new mother entrepreneur does. She typed one-handed while holding her sleeping baby, building an empire while nurturing the future. The ultimate multitasking moment that working mothers everywhere recognize as their daily reality. The algorithm that Marcus tried to steal had indeed destroyed his empire, just not the way he had planned. Rebecca's story proves that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success. She turned her greatest vulnerability into her greatest strength. She transformed workplace discrimination into entrepreneurial triumph. And she proved that underestimating a pregnant woman is the most expensive mistake anyone can make. But Rebecca's victory isn't just her own. It's a victory for every woman who's been told she's distracted by pregnancy, every developer who's had their work stolen, every employee who's faced discrimination disguised as performance issues. If this story inspired you, if it made you believe that justice is possible, even when the system seems rigged against you, then please hit that like button. Your support helps stories like Rebecca's reach women who need to hear them most. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time you fought back against workplace discrimination. Your story might inspire someone else to find their strength. Share this with any working mothers in your life. They need to know they're not alone in this fight. And if you want more stories of women turning their worst moments into their greatest triumphs, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because every week we bring you real stories of real women who refuse to stay silent. Remember, your career setback might just be your comeback story waiting to happen. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.